Domestic violence, or will I say domestic abuse, also called domestic violence or intimate partner violence, can be defined as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Domestic violence is often used as a synonym for intimate partner violence, which is committed by one of the people in an intimate relationship against the other person, and can take place in relationships or between former spouses or partners. In this broadcast sense, domestic violence also involves violence against children, parents, or the elderly. It can assume multiple forms, including physical, verbal, emotional, economical, religious, reproductive, financial, abuse, or sexual abuse. It can range from subtle, coercive forms to marital rape and other violent physical abuse, such as choking, beating, female genital mutilation, and acid throwing that may result to disfigurement or death. Now the question is, who suffers more in domestic violence? Welcome to Insight Today. I am Jumai Manson. And now today I have a guest with me. He is Prince Hastrop Joseph. He's a life coach, administrator, protocol officer, a minister, husband, and a father to 3 lovely daughters. Now don't go anywhere. The show returns shortly. You're welcome back to Insight Today if you're just tuning in. Now, looking at the question at hand, domestic abuse, also called domestic violence. Many homes, individuals suffer this sort of abuse on various individual partners, or I say when they live together and they're intimate. Well, looking at this, what are the triggers? What are the solutions? What are the sense of belonging when it comes to domestic violence? Is there any excuse really? Like I said, I will be joined by Prince Hastrop Joseph, and he will be intimating us and telling us what domestic violence entails and what are the triggers and who actually suffers more. Most people will say the women suffer more. Yes, because women are less stronger than men. But is that really the case? Recently, 2 days ago, we heard of a woman who actually bathed her husband with hot water because he went to a ceremony without taking her along, and in her claim, in quote, infidelity set in, no trust involved. So let's be joined by Prince Joseph Hastrop as he breaks it down to us what domestic violence entails, if it's one-sided, the triggers, the solutions, and how to come to a compromise. Good afternoon, Mr. Prince Joseph Hastrop. Are you with me?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Fine, and it's so awesome to be on the program today.
It's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being available. Now, looking at this critically, domestic violence, what comes to mind?
Well, domestic violence is a serious issue, and it has a lot of definition. But looking at it from the serious angle, is a pattern of abusive behavior used to gain or keep power and control over another person in a relationship. So this is, if you are experiencing abuse, you are options for getting help, because you
getting help.
cannot stay in it and said all is fine.
But is that necessarily the case when it comes to such, when for individuals that do not want to get help?
Well, if individual decided not to get help, I'm sorry, it might lead to death. Because from statistics, we've seen a lot of issues where one of the partners decided to keep quiet, and the result is not always palatable. A lot of things will go wrong. The children, those who are around the family there will be impacted in one way or the other negatively. And this is not going to be good for the society at large.
All right, now, Mr. Prince Joseph Hastrop, let's quickly go on a quick break. When we return, we'll continue with our topic and our discuss for today.
Thank you very much. Hello?
You're welcome back again. And of course, this is Inside Today. And we're looking at domestic abuse, also called domestic violence. And of course, the life coach, which he will be joining us shortly, spoke about getting help. Now, some people will say, why should I get help when this is the pattern? The pattern when it comes to my father was like this to my mother. And that's the way we gain respect. And so women will say, their mom was very abusive to their fathers. And that was why I mentioned from the beginning that there is something called who suffers most. And that is why I wanted the life coach to throw more insight on who actually suffers most, the triggers involved. If it's a form of identity crisis, yeah, because I know for free that some male in quotes will say the reason why they actually perform this sort of abuse is to gain respect, because once their ego is bruised, it becomes a very difficult task to gain it back. So a small "I'm not coming" or "give me time" by their spouse will result to a slap, a blow, or something even worse. And I hope I'm being joined by Prince Hastrop Joseph. Are you here, Mr. Joseph? Have you joined? Looking at it critically, it's a very sad story. It doesn't matter who is at fault. It doesn't matter who says what first. Domestic violence should not be practiced. Now, looking at it critically, like I mentioned from the beginning, I said some individuals use the excuse of my father was like that to my mother. That's the only thing I know growing up as a child. And this sort of behavior transcends to the children and also giving them that same justification when they abuse their partners when they grow up. Let's quickly go on a break. Inside Today will continue. It's Insight Today on Global Television. Now, still looking at domestic violence known as domestic abuse. Now, looking at it critically, Mr. Prince Joseph Hastrop, he said something. He says this sort of behavior is so negative that it affects everyone in society and everyone living in that particular environment with the abuser and, of course, the person receiving this sort of abuse. Hello, Mr. Prince Joseph Hastrop, have you joined me now?
Yes, I'm with you now. Thank you for having me once more.
Okay, you are here with me. Now, looking at it, you mentioned something. You said it could cause death if not looked into. Can you throw more light in that?
Yes, because these activities of domestic violence is not something that will start just all of a sudden. It would have been building up over the time, and without much attention in taking care of that particular habit, attitude, some form of things you do at home that are not pleasant, and you overlook them. Eventually, this grows into abuse. And when it is in deep situation, it can lead to beating, battering, yelling, humiliating, putting down, physical appearance. I mean, it goes a long way. And if there are no people to assist such kind of family at a particular time, it might lead to death, because one person can be beaten up and eventually it will end up dead.
Now, I want to ask a question. I know so many people will wonder, what are the triggers? You know, I mentioned at the beginning that some children actually watch their fathers do the same act to their mothers. For them, it's a norm. That is what rules. When a woman says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't go on an errand, I am too tired to cook, it comes with a slap, it comes with a shove, it comes with a blow. And now, looking at that critically, do you think that is like a trigger to an individual, a boy who has grown into a man now, and he practiced the same thing on his spouse? Is that a trigger?
Yes, it's a serious trigger. Something that can lead another person into such kind of behavior. Because when you look at it, you want to practice what you have seen over time. And this is going to lead that person into another abuse. A child that maybe saw the father shouting, slapping, holding down, shoving, or pushing, pulling your hair, choking, Some can even go up to that length of choking the partner. And these children will look at that and all those things and want to feel it's normal. And when they grow with it, they want to practice it because they feel it's a normal thing to do. When you ask them, why did you do this? All you get is, I've seen my dad did this some time ago. And I feel it's the normal way to life. So it's a serious trigger, and, driving away self-esteem is also another trigger, because when people want to express themselves and you shut them down continuously, like the children wants to say something, keep quiet, don't tell me that, I know more than you, this and that. It kills their self-esteem. And this is also another trigger, and more to it. And before you know it, it graduates. And this graduation can lead to their life, when they grow up, they want to practice some of those things.
Mr. Prince Hastrop, when you hear domestic violence, people just say it's one-sided, that it's the woman that suffers much more than the men. But, yesterday there was a particular story that came out. A woman actually poured hot water on her husband because he did not take her to they had a function and she didn't accompany him. And she just insinuated in her mind that infidelity took place or he was unfaithful. And the next thing you know, she got hot water and baited him from up to down, causing serious burns. Now, when we hear domestic violence, we say the women suffer more. But is that true for a fact?
Uh, um, because of the physical side of this, when we want to look at it, we will look at it in the area of strength. And we want to assume, we want to take it that the women are mostly the ones that are being abused. But from history and from record, we see that that is partially true because 91% of those that suffer this domestic violence are women. But men too also suffer that. You know, a man that was, bathed with hot water is actually going through something. And some, even not just hot water, receive physical beating from their wives. And they will not be able to say it because they feel if they say these things, it will lead to embarrassment. They will have this low self-esteem. A lot of things will be attached, so they will prefer to keep quiet. In some areas, you see that the men even suffer the violence more than the women. But generally, looking at it on a global terms, we see or we can say that women are those that suffer most of this domestic abuse.
Okay, Mr. Prince Hastrop, let's bring it home now. For, when we hear domestic violence, people just think it's when it is physical, forgetting the fact that emotionally that is part of violence, psychologically, when it comes to when you withdraw or you try to punish an individual, that is causing violence directly or indirectly. Now, when it comes to the marriage sector now, for individuals who are listening and saying to themselves, at least I don't put my hands on my wife, at least I don't put my hands on my husband, at least I don't put my hands on my fiance because they cohabit. So this particular emotional, psychological abuse, is it the same as the physical or they work entwined?
Well, they work together because we cannot limit domestic abuse to just battering. There are other things, just like you said, the emotional and psychological effect is there. And, a woman that is going through an emotional pain or crack is also suffering this. Either way, the men too suffer this. It's not just about beating or battering. The emotional crack is there, the emotional pain. Sometimes you needed support. You need somebody to listen to you. You have something to say and nobody is ready to listen. That's another side of the story. They are all abused. No matter how small people look at it, they want to consider these things as not tangible. But I tell you, these are places where this whole thing starts from. A man that is not, that needed somebody to listen, like a wife or a woman who expect the husband to listen to what she has to say, and none of the party is listening. This will degenerate into another aspect. And before you know it, it will lead to what we call silent treatment. The couple doesn't want to talk to each other. Maybe when this person is supposed to talk, you will just be looking quiet. That is going to send another signal to any of the parties. These are all violence in the household. And so they intertwine. They are not just, we cannot just say it is only on battery. It goes on and on with so many arbitrary things we do. Some is even the cohabitation. The way they live is so dirty. I mean, this is another violence. I mean, a man that loves cleanliness or a woman that loves cleanliness, we see a man that comes and destroys the house as another violence. So before you know it, if these things are not properly taken care of or talked about, it leads to another area of domestic violence.
Mr. Prince, there's this funny story I heard, and I know this individual who said he actually beat up his wife and divorced her because she was always doing things that irritate his system. And when you mention a man who is dirty or, that as little as, okay, I feel communication can be passed. But he said his wife does it intentionally. When she sees that it's almost time, if it's 5 o'clock, she starts frying fish. And she knows deep down that he hates fish. She keeps doing it and she keeps getting beaten for it all the time. But she keeps doing it because I think she's actually used to it or something. So he said, okay, because he doesn't want to kill her, it's better he divorces her. So that was what he did. Now, some women out there who are used to this sort of treatment take it as a norm. But you know, you mentioned something that is very sensitive. You said it can actually lead to death. So at what point, what triggers that particular instance that it can lead to death?
Yes, you see, when somebody has given it all and probably is looking at a situation where there's supposed to be a change, but when the change is not coming, it leads to something else. I mean, and they interpret these old ideas or this situation to let me finish it. And this finishing it means let me end it. Some violence leads to suicide. I mean, some have been living with a woman or a man that all along their journey has been so bitter. Any one of the party can just give it all. I mean, throw in the towel and say, I cannot do this again. Instead of me living in this home, it's better I just end it. So before you know it, they do all sorts of things. Probably take some drugs that are harmful to the system. Some can hang themselves. These are things that does not happen before. But now, because of the way the system is changing, I mean, a lot of things we imbibe, some cultures that are not ours, we look into and we want to bring them into our daily living. We resort into that. Anybody can just decide to throw in towards a woman that is always battered. And she is living under this for maybe 10, 15 years. And this man will continue to do this. Can either say, wow, is either I stay in this marriage and continue to receive this beating, or I should just end it. Sometimes the man will just come home and see that she has already given up. You know, like you said, some attitude, some behavior might lead to this kind of thing. And well, there are solutions to them, but people don't look into that first. They decide to do what is in their mind. When a man gets so angry, upset to a particular stage, he can no longer control it. Then he becomes serious. He wants to vent his anger. He wants to pour it out. Then this whole thing starts. You understand? And even while they were beating, either of the party can use any weapon, and death will be the end. Yeah.
And in looking at triggers now, for instance, you know, sometimes I think it has to do with transfer of aggression. When a man is, for most people that say a man that beats a woman or a woman that beats her spouse is weak, you know, there's something called walking away. That particular method, I hear it helps. But you know, because of the kind of society in which we find ourselves, we have norms, we have traditions. Some women would rather stay in that marriage because of the stigmatization, you know, the hearsays. You know, we have, you know, some traditions. You can't, once you're married, you're married. Whatever you see, you take. You know, that is the norm and that is the mindset of most women. And that's why you see it leads to death, it leads to suicidal attempts, and it leads to so many things that are unthinkable. You know, this sort of things, it happens mainly because the woman is too scared, or she doesn't want that stigmatization that is, you know, a woman who has left her marriage, and the men, like I said, is versa versa. The man who is too ashamed to say, hey, I'm always beaten by my wife. As funny as that, it's not funny, but as awkward as it sounds, because we feel a man is supposed to be stronger, have more strength, and yet he goes through this particular issue. What can you place around that?
Well, there is a saying that says, a stitch in time saves nine.
Saves nine, yes.
Yes, and all these things we're talking about surely have a way out of them. But when you refuse to apply the precaution, then the other will now take the end of it. I mean, when you refuse to take precaution, when these things are happening or start coming in, there is always a way of dealing with this. But most times we shy away from it, we keep quiet, we want to treat with silence, and all that also triggers the violence. And before you know it, we will now be doing damage control. The woman that decides to stay where she's being battered always is looking for something else. And that thing is not good. You cannot say because of stigmatization, this and that, you remain in a marriage that is always on battle. You can separate. I mean, then you can deal with this whole matter through you can visit those people who we call counselors. You
Therapist.
can therapies, they can talk about this, they can make you come together and live a perfect life again. But when you don't do that, you are going to be faced with a lot of difficulties. And any child, anyone living in that same environment cannot have anything good out of it. Bet me, it will develop into some kind of, I mean, as if you are sharing this whole thing to them to see that this is the best way of life. Beat your wife, beat your husband, beat your children, because the domestic violence did not end there, only on the child, the mother or the father. Or what about the child? There is also violence against the child. So these are things that should not be happening. I also expect that there should be availability of crisis intervention strategy. Sometimes we need to have this provision of crisis intervention services. Then I also believe that the government should try to see how they can make an advocacy and legal assistance for people going through this kind of abuse. I mean, when we make the law very, very strong and people will see the penalties, that when you do I mean, it is going to take care of some of those things. What
You know what?
about provision of supplementary support service
You know
when
what,
things are going,
you know, I'm
okay?
sorry to interject. I've heard and seen a situation whereby a woman is being beaten by her husband, or when it's versa versa, and they actually go to the police station. As long as it's not death entailed or no one has lost their life, and they go up and she says, oh please, I'm being beaten by my husband, or she says that as a claim, they say it's a family matter. When the man says it's a family matter, they just discard that case. When you mentioned the government, I'm sure the government are nipping it in the bud when it comes to situations like, but that is the case. When you hear it's a family matter, it means it doesn't concern anyone outside that family. I mentioned at the beginning, I said, when I said children, I mentioned spouses, either they're cohabiting or they're not. Even the elderly suffer violence. There's some
Yes.
children that actually beat or will I say physically hurt the elderly when it comes to their grandparents who are really old. And when you mention it affects everyone around that society, that's a number, and that is actually true. You know what? Let's quickly go on a quick break. And then when we return, we will continue with the discuss, which is domestic violence. Don't forget, this is Inside Today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back. You're welcome back. It's Insight Today on Global Television, and we're looking at a very sensitive issue. It's all about domestic abuse or violence, I will just put it. Now, I am here. I'm not doing it alone. I have Prince Hastrop Joseph, who is a life coach. He is a counselor. He is a protocol individual, and he is a minister also when it comes to this sort of issues. Mr. Hastrop, good afternoon again, and thank you for joining me on Insight Today.
So much for having me.
Okay, now looking at, I mentioned something. I said the police, for instance, when a woman runs to the police station and says, oh, her husband is beating her up, and immediately they summon the husband and he says it's a family issue. It's like the issue at hand has been discarded because it's a family issue. They can go and resolve it as husband and wife, not interfering, not minding that she has been physically assaulted. Have you seen such before?
Well, I think the reason why the police are doing that is because they feel that person has not come to the right place. Yes, there are other areas, other parastatals, or let me say ministry, where these kind of issues can be looked into. Like we have the women affairs, yes, where you can complain about, and we also have NAPTIN, I guess, where they look into the issues concerning children and all that. How they cohabit and if there are violence against one or two. Police deal with things that are more than just the way they call it, family things. But I believe what they should have done is to guide them on where to go and make a good complaint, and then to be able to, handle the issue for them.
And we'll be back shortly. Don't go anywhere. You are welcome back, and of course, it's Insight Today, and looking at domestic abuse called domestic violence. It is very critical in our society, trying to juggle and trying to understand why this sort of issue keeps coming up on a daily. If it's either a man beats or abuses his spouse to death, or the spouse actually just maim or aims at destroying the individual when it comes to acid bath, hot water bath. We've heard a lot of stories when it comes to this sort of abuse. And how do we curtail this sort of issue in our society? And now I am joined with Prince Hastrop Joseph, and we are going to be, I want to ask him, what are the triggers? Now, I mentioned an individual or a little boy or little girl growing up as a child, and they have actually witnessed or watched their parents do this sort of things to their parents actually do this sort of thing when it comes to the man mishandling or beating up their mom or with verbal abuse. psychological, physical, name it. All of these things are under the umbrella of domestic abuse. And like I said, I am joined with Mr. Prince Hastrop Joseph, and he's here with me. Hello, sir. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here with you.
Hello?
Thank you for having me.
Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, I
Yes,
can hear you.
I can hear you loud and clear. Now, I want to know, what do you think are the triggers to domestic violence, or may I say domestic violence? What are the triggers to this domestic abuse?
But the triggers are many. Depends on the area where they are coming from. We have like social isolation, jealousy, and possessiveness. You know, when somebody is too possessive, you know, low self-esteem, like I mentioned to you, emotional dependence on others. I mean, general hostility, especially towards the opposite gender, and then some certain personality disorder, including antisocial personality. Some people don't just know how to socialize. And when this is happening, they just get turned off. And whatever you do with them at that particular time can lead to, you know, the reaction. You will understand that these people don't know what to do in this kind of circumstances, you know. So, and jealousy is another thing, you know. Possessiveness, you just want that person to be always on ground, just by your side, and immediately it's turned off, that person is in trouble, you know. Social isolation, when you isolate somebody out of his will, out of his wish, you know, these are going to send wrong signal into that person's and behavior, and before you know it, it becomes violent.
But what happened to trust?
Okay.
Trust. For instance, trust. When you do not trust the individual, can it actually lead to this sort of thing?
Yes. You can liken the trust to, you know, these are jealousy and possessiveness. If you trust me, you will allow me to go and do some other things. And if you trust me, you will not be jealous about you having to do things with some other thing, or the achievement of a particular person will not be a concern to you. You understand? So trust in this issue can also lead to violence. You know, when there is dishonesty, distrust, then so many things will be happening in the brain. You know, this thing has to do with personality. Yes, it is going to interpret it in a negative way, and once the interpretation comes to you back, it's more or less like giving and receiving a signal. And once the signal comes negative, the reaction is going to be violent.
Can you throw more light on personality disorder?
Yeah, personality disorder in the sense that there are some people that cannot act in the right way. Most especially maybe, you know, where you have these people that are having some form of like, let me call people with low self-esteem, and they are in the midst of some people that are outgoing, outspoken, and all that. You see, these things will tend to come in. You know, your personality is so timid that you don't like associating. And when it comes to associating with people, this thing comes in. You begin to react negatively. You know, some people don't see things positively. They always see things, those are the disorder, because it's a trait, it's a personality thing. They see things negatively. When people are talking about the positive aspect of things, they don't want to see that. They always want to see the negative aspect. So, and when anybody meets those kind of people, you see what they are going to be doing. the arguments they are going to produce is not going to be sweet. It's going to be very, very tense, and before you know it, it becomes violent. I mean, you can see some people that will wake up in the house, dress normal. You think they are going to the office, but they are seriously going to where they want to go and argue. It's a disorder. It is not normal for any man to get up from the house, dress in suit with tie, you think he's going to the office, but seriously he's going to where he's going to argue. He wants to begin to talk. Yes, some will dress up, you think they are going to work, but you see them landing in where they are going to drink. They drink all day. So these are disorders. Their brains are not functioning properly. And this is part of them already. So there are several ways of dealing with them. And if these things are not done from the onset or from the foundation when traces of it start, then it's going to continue. God knows when.
You know, I want to ask a question. I know you were from were different genders. You know, most people will say the female suffers more. Some will say the male, directly or indirectly, suffers more. Who suffers more, in your own opinion?
Like I said, the women generally, quote and unquote, are those people that they feel suffer most in this domestic violence, because when you want to look at the strength of the man, you want to believe that the man has the strength. And from statistics, we discovered that 91% of women are the ones that suffer this domestic violence more. But we have some exceptions that men also suffer these things. You know, because when you look at some of the cases that leads to this domestic violence, you see that we have this emotional crack, emotional pain. Even sex in marriage can lead to violence. And sometimes the man may be the one that is denying. And all of these are, some women even beat up the men, big time. And the man will not be able to speak out because he will be feeling that once I say this out, that my wife gave me some good beating, he's going to lose his respect, he's going to be embarrassed and all that. So this will make them to be quiet, and it will degenerate. So this is the way we look at it on a general note. Yes.
Now, what do you think are the solutions? Being a life coach, what are the solutions that can help an individual? Because when you tell a man, go seek help, or you tell a woman, go seek help, they tell you, are you kidding me right now? Go seek help. This is something that I can just shove or brush over, I can change. But the truth is, we all know that a man that constantly abuse his spouse, a woman that constantly abuse her spouse, not once, not twice, not thrice, will the person stop without seeking or getting help?
Well, there are several ways we can provide solution to domestic abuse. Like you know, one of it is availability of crisis intervention strategy. You know, provision of crisis intervention services, the uses of crisis hotlines, which I think we don't have in this area of the world. Probably in Africa in general, we need some of these things to work out. People go to study marriage and family therapy, and you know, this is a complete office where people come and you know, they bring their trouble, their problems, or when they see things is going wrong, they will come to these people and they get good advice on how to take care of their home. And this has been solving a lot of problems, even where these domestic violence are very, very on the high side. But here in Africa, I think the thing is still not very strong. You know, I don't know of any therapists now, although we are beginning to have them one after the other, but they are still very low. So we need them to take care of this kind of. Another one is provision of emotional support. You know, provision of self-help through support group. This is beginning to happen now on internet, where you have some people that you can talk to, and then their group that you tell them what is going on in your family, and they try to see how you can work out some differences. And it's been helping. And another one is provision of advocacy and legal assistance. You know, when you have access to and custody of probably children, solving issues with property distribution among the partners and all this. Once this advocacy and legal assistance are in place, you see that some people, I mean, family, the man, the woman will be putting themselves into check, because you know you are about to lose some values. When you do this, this will be taken off you, and this will be taken up from you. So they begin to look at these things and begin to work less into violence. You resolve issues through communication. Bring everything to the table. Talk about it and try as much as possible to resolve it. And maybe another one is provision of supplementary support service. Provisional house of child care, provision of housing, and probably safe accommodation, whereby some of these people going through this rough surface or rough patches can easily move and stay for some time, for them to clear up or do one or two things before the old issues can be dealt with.
Oh,
Yes.
this is where we have to draw the curtain. Thank you so much, Mr. Prince Hastrop Joseph. I really appreciate you being on the program Inside Today. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. I'm so blessed out coming here and having you to have me.
And of course, Prince Hastrop Joseph is a life coach, administrator. He's a minister. He's a protocol officer, husband and father to 3 lovely daughters. Thank you so much for being a part of Inside Today. And that's a wrap on the program Inside Today. And today we looked at a very sensitive issue, which is domestic abuse, or you can call it domestic violence. It is real. And the words of Pastor Mr. Hastrop Joseph, he said, "Speak out and seek help." I am Jumai Manson. Thank you for being there. Bye-bye.